All right, everyone, let's make a start of it today. Really thrilled to welcome back Mr. Tony Abrahams, the co-founder, the CEO, the major shareholder of AI Media. AIM is the code. We've spoken to Tony twice before, the most recent of which was about 6, 7 months ago. For those that are new to the business, it provides live automated captioning, translation, transcription services, and it's increasingly powered by AI. Now, AI is obviously a very hot topic right now. There's no shortage of hype. But as we said last time, AI media was well down this path before the current craze. And one of the key takeaways, I think, from the chat is that AI in this regard is not in competition with an OpenAI or an Anthropic or a Google or any of these sort of big players. In fact, this tech is being integrated into the stack that AI media is using. And interestingly, not in a way that is easily replicable. And this is the point I think we should probably hit at the start. We'll do that in just a moment. I'll let Tony give you the better explanation into this critical insight. But essentially, the moat really lies in AI media's encoders and how that tech is embedded into the customer workflows, into the technology stack. And clearly, look, you can talk all day long about how good something could be, but it's always a bit more interesting when you actually see it playing out in the real world and when you see it playing out in terms of actual sales of units, et cetera, et cetera. Now, this is something we'll also get into, but it's a little bit hard to see at the surface level because within AI media, you've got sort of two segments, and one is on the ascent and one is on the descent. So at the aggregate level, it's kind of like, well, what's really going on here? Look underneath the hood. That's where the signal is. That's what we're going to talk about today. And that's what we're going to help everyone sort of like peel apart. And look, the other thing to sort of say, despite all of that, we're still looking at a company that's got positive cash flows, positive EBITDA, and a really healthy balance sheet, which is always a good starting point to have. So just a quick reminder, we've got tons of questions that are through. If you like any of them in particular, vote them up, and I'll just go top to bottom, and please add more through as they come. And final thing, none of this is advice, which everyone knows. So all that said and done, Tony, good to see you again.
Thanks, Andrew, and thanks for the great introduction. And yeah, I think, look, I started AI Media 22 years ago now, and we've been using AI for 22 years. But for the first 17 years, we were using it in that traditional artificial intelligence, machine learning way, where we still had a human in the loop on every single product that we delivered.
Yeah.
And then the AI got better and better at sort of recognizing that human's intervention. It's probably important now, Andrew, and saying, yeah, everything that you said was 100% right. I'll just share this screen because I think it gives a little bit of help in terms of understanding exactly what the moat is and in terms of visualizing that moat.
Perfect.
But effectively, this moat is something that we acquired very strategically 6 months after listing. And we did that to take advantage of what we believed was the best technology to win in the generative AI world in live video.
Yeah.
Live video is probably the first most important thing I've learnt in terms of telling the story.
Right.
We kind of take that for granted because that's the basis in which we're operating in. But it's really, really, really important to stress that everything that we're talking about now deals with live video.
Yes.
And so the particular elements of the architecture that we've put together are designed to deliver accurate, fast responses. Now, as you know, there's that old saying that you can have something fast, accurate, or cheap. You can't have all three.
Right.
We're going for all three.
Right.
We're going for that holy grail. And really, the way we're doing that is to say, right now, we're leading the industry in terms of the transition from what has been a human-augmented AI service to a completely technology-based AI service. Yep. And we've done this with no shortage of courage, I think, because we've completely disintermediated our own legacy business and cannibalized our own business to the extent that we are now delivering 100 times the volume that we did in 2020, 100 times the volume. We did less than less than 1 million minutes in 2020, and we're delivering 120 million minutes in 2025. But we're doing it at a similar revenue.
Wow.
And you go, well, how are you doing that? And the answer is, well, with a shit ton more volume. And effectively what we've had to do is we've had to completely release and blow up our existing business and try to scramble to cover as much of that revenue as possible from new industries and new markets. So we've effectively swapped what was an Australian captioning business dealing with Channel 7, Channel 9, Foxtel, and a bunch of the channels around that in a kind of legacy services business for a US-centered broadcast business that's effectively only technology. And we've done that by recognizing that the value will accrue to the owner of an ecosystem that allows you to best and most flexibly deliver the inputs into the AI engine. And it's all on this page. So our entire ecosystem is on this page. The ecosystem works as well for captioning as it does for voice, as it does for Lexi AI or Lexi Brew, which is our new generative AI product that utilizes our customers' data for internal distribution in a consistent way while keeping it private and secure from the public LLM. And so the way the system works, just briefly, and I might just pause after this, Andrew, because this is kind of the most important bit, is we get the raw media fire hose in, and that plugs into an encoder. Now, those encoders we acquired with EEG. That EEG business was 80%. Sorry, it was 95% encoder sales in terms of its revenue when we acquired them. That business line was 40 years old. They were making 75 points on those hardware, which were manufactured in Farmingdale, Long Island. We are still doing exactly that in that business unit. But on top of that, what we've been able to do is we've been able to really jumpstart sales of the automatic captioning products that we're delivering through the encoder network, utilizing the ICAP network and Lexi. And the way that's done is effectively utilizing the encoder to send very small bandwidth streams up over the ICAP network, which you can think of kind of the central nervous system of the entire ecosystem. And then that goes up to a cloud instance, which in this case is very similar to the AWS cloud. So you think of it as a secure cloud. And on that secure cloud, we put dozens of different API engines, right? And this is where you talk about, well, what happens if, Anthropic or whoever come up with a new engine? The answer is, well, we just put that new engine on the cloud. And we pay them, a few dollars a minute for using their API. But what we're doing is we're putting the inputs into that API in a way that is automated. That's what we do. We're actually serving up the inputs into the engine. We're more the fuel injection system than we are anything else.
I like that.
Right. Like you still need to get the fuel into the engine. Somebody else builds the engine. We're the bit that puts the fuel into the engine. And I use a few different analogies, and I don't want to sort of overstress each one, but we're also more toll road than Tesla, if I can put it that way, right? Because it's about taking the information from an on-ramp, getting it onto the freeway, and then the off-ramp is really important too, which is on point 4 here, which is you still have to actually display the captions so someone can read them. Right. And that's what the encoders do as well. Now, this piece of technology is really niche. The total market size for the encoders in US broadcast is about $10 million a year. So people say, well, why isn't someone going to come and, replicate that technology? Well, there's just not a very big market. Right? Like, could they? Sure. Have they? No. Is there anyone else in the world that's doing it? No. Why not? Well, there's not really a clear business case to do it because there's already one that does it really well. And then
Can
if
I?
you are going to do that, how are you then going to, you then have to then also build iCap and Lexi in the back end. And
Yeah.
then you have to do that to interface with the customer's media automation systems, right? And an automation system tells you, I'm going to an ad break now. It's the Coke commercial. Stop the captioning over the Coke commercial because there's a there's a pre-recorded file that goes with the Coke commercial that's in all the Coke colors in all the right places. And if you put our $8.80 captions over a Coke ad that you're getting $250,000 for, they're going to get really upset.
Yep.
So don't do that.
Can
that's
I?
part of the automation that goes with it.
Can I just see if I've got this right, Tony? One of the things that I think stood out for me was that there's these encoders in large part exist already outside of what you're doing, right? There are other use cases. It's not as though like you buy an encoder because you want to do the kind of stuff that AI media allows. You're already needing an encoder for various other uses. So that's the first point. And the second point being is you've got the one that has the market leadership there. And why that's important is because network effects matter. And as I understand it, these are encoders that have proprietary firmware and the rest of it. So in other words, if I was Channel 7 or whoever, and I say, wow, there's another encoder over here and it's slightly cheaper and maybe it's got some extra bells and whistles. It's not a matter of just replacing that box. It's about replacing or reconfiguring the entire tech stack around all of that stuff. And just back to that earlier point, you've got them all anyway. So you've kind of got a bit of a Trojan horse in terms of sneaking the offer. Not sneaking is not the right word, but you know what I mean? Like slipping the offering into their existing workflow and offering. Have I got that right? Or am I
You
barking?
absolutely, you have that about as well as anyone I've ever heard explain it, and you've probably done it 10 times better than I've ever done it. So maybe I'll just capture that and use it. But this is and this next slide here, Andrew, that's the proof in the pudding.
Right.
Right, which is, when we acquired EEG, almost all of the captioning was already being done, but it was all being done by humans at 10 times the price. That was the bit that was in black and not in pink, right? Over the last 3 years, we've increased that share from 16% of 41.1 million minutes in the half, right, to 54% of 62 million in the half. And we've done that by also having 40 competitors that haven't gone away.
Right.
And the only reason we've been able to do that is because we've had the Trojan horse. Right? Because that Trojan horse encoder that's already sitting there, that someone's already paid $10,000 for 5 years ago, they're not going to replace that because they want some different captioning company. No, they're going to want an encoder that continues to pass their signal through so that they continue to stay on air.
Yeah. That was where the penny dropped for me last time we had a chat, because I think, again, it's always difficult dealing with B2B type businesses because we don't have it in our daily experience as consumers, as quote unquote retail investors, and where we do have contact with it, you just kind of see these. I'm on my YouTube, on Vimeo here with what we're using. You just see these captions pop up, and it doesn't feel like there's anything sort of special about it or proprietary about it. But it's that exact point there that I think is the important thing to grasp for an investor who is. There's one thing to sort of say this is a service and offering that will be more widespread in the future. I don't think anyone would argue that. The key question is why AI media? And I think that is what helps address that question.
Yeah. And Andrew, picking up on that example, because it's a really good one, right? So we're working within 2 systems on this particular webinar, right? We're working with Vimeo and we're working with Zoom.
Yep.
Right? Ultimately, the encoding is being done via software from Zoom that's first doing it, right? Because I'm not connected to Vimeo, I'm connected via Zoom. So actually the core encoding right now is being done by Zoom. Zoom is now handing it off to Vimeo. Vimeo is then using that output to do the captioning.
Yes. Yep. Right. And so, and then the other part of it too is the margins. I suppose it's obvious that when there's less people and you can do it faster and better, that you're going to not only get better margins, but that's going to help in the unleash the latent operating leverage potential of the business as well. In other words, you should be able to expect, and I think you've got a slide for this that shows some pretty attractive revenue growth, but far more attractive operating profit growth.
That's right. And look, the key really has been in the transformation of the business. And as you say, really, if you just look at the headline, which most people do, it says nothing much going on here. Business is actually going backwards 3% in sort of terms of total revenue.
Yep.
EBITDA is looking flat. In fact, it's going backwards half on the PCP.
Yep.
Nothing to see here.
Yep.
But when you unpack that, you actually can see that what's really happening is we've got this general decline in services revenue that we've not only predicted, but we've said is going to accelerate.
Yep.
But we've been picking up this technology revenue. But when you also recognize that we've increased this technology revenue by a further 3 million in terms of SaaS that's been sold but not recognized, then you start to actually recognize that, well, not only is the overall revenue picture misleading, the tech revenue picture itself is misleading, because we're not comparing apples with apples.
Yep.
Because while our hardware revenue is pretty constant over where we were, what we're seeing is a massive shift in the nature of the business across the three regions, from services to technology. But as we transition from services to technology, we're also transitioning from a services model where you get paid and you recognize the revenue right away to a SaaS model where you get paid and you don't recognize the revenue for 12 months.
Yep.
So you go, well, how do we actually unpack all this? We go, well, there's actually another piece in the puzzle here, right? Which is, you know, to kind of your point earlier, Andrew, on Pro Medicus, when it was, 85 cents and it was profitable and cash flow positive, we're in a pretty similar position to them at a pretty similar price. When you also recognize that in the 6 months to December 31, we increased our operating expenses, but we only did it in product and sales and marketing. And we only did it to introduce 2 brand new product lines, Lexi Voice and Lexi Brew, that have no sales so far.
Yep.
And all of this was expensed. So all of this was expensed. The tech revenue growth of 12% is understated by $3 million because we registered $3 million more in SaaS than we had before. The tech gross profit is up $2 million on last year. The services gross profit is way down, as you can see. So even though the revenue is holding up, right, the gross profit's collapsing because of this, as you say, the much higher gross margins that we're getting in the technology business. But also, we've got less revenue now to actually, cover the basic, fixed variable costs, if I can put it that way.
Yep.
The coordinators and the HR managers and all the rest of that, which is why the team led by Donna Reed, my chief operating officer, is really getting to the point at the pointy end now of effectively shutting down the kind of legacy infrastructure business by December of this year. And that involves like an enormous cost out operation. We've already taken 5 million annualized savings out in December. So we know that that's why we will be at the sort of $4 million EBITDA mark for the full year. But to your point, Andrew, right, we still generated 3.4 million in positive operating cash flow, notwithstanding that increase in investment. And that's a combination of the SaaS growth, the cost out, and the revenue recognition principles, as well as the fact that we've basically the only capex that we've actually spent is for equipment that we purchased for our manufacturing facility in Farmingdale, Long Island.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the key. And what we've also then said is that these investments that we've now made that are in the rearview mirror are the investments that are going to be required to effectively take us to a successful position in the top row, in terms of the drive to get to 60 million in EBITDA in FY29. And that frankly is enough. That by simply layering in voice and moving across to EMEA and Asia in terms of broadcast, and the addition of Lexi Voice and the addition of Lexi Brew, Lexi AI, we will have the ability to get to that target organically just in that top row. Now, we've also said that while that's an organic target, we will be also looking for opportunities at inorganic growth. And the inorganic growth opportunities will be, much as you've said, looking for partnership opportunities with existing encoders, because as you say, there's plenty of other existing encoder companies that don't have that software and ecosystem that we do. The ability to us to put that software and ecosystem onto somebody else's encoder network, that effectively would animate that encoder network into effectively that same Trojan horse network that we acquired with EEG. But we don't then have to acquire a company that's got the software. We just have to apply that software that we acquired from EEG to that person's encoder network.
Yep. And look, I'm no coder, but that doesn't sound like a massive ordeal in terms of making sure the language spoken is the same. You know, the underlying smarts are the same. The underlying process are the same. It's just a matter of converting it to to be able to sort of communicate between different systems.
Yeah. And we've proven on a technical level that we can develop and have an SDK applied to somebody else's encoder network. And we've done that on pre-existing encoder networks to prove it, which are Grass Valley, Imagine, and Media Proxy. And that's certainly given us the confidence to say we know that this will work on any other encoder network that has the ability to effectively read the fire hose of data that's coming from the customer. And we have the ability to then overlay whatever tech is required to then put captions or voice back on.
Yeah, love that. We do a lot of these, Tony, and there's a couple of things that really stand out. You don't come across too many businesses that destroy a part of their own business intentionally, but for good reason. I mean, I guess that, you know, it's like Amazon and the Kindle, right? Like actively destroying their own business. And it's rational if you think, well, it's going to go anyway, so it might as well be us that disrupt ourselves rather than someone else doing it, which I love. It's a tell in terms of long-term thinking. I think ongoing investment is also a good sign of long-term thinking, and particularly expensing that. So you've done a really good job to sort of emphasize all of that. We had this really, a lot of our members caught some of the events and talks and stuff you did after the results came out. We had this really detailed discussion on the forums. Do you mind if I put a few questions to you around
I love that.
Yeah? Awesome. So some of this might get a little bit into the weeds here. So I'll go through what I picked out of it, and then I'll jump to Slido for the audience questions. Tony, can you walk us through how you define and classify tech versus services revenue today, and how has that changed from recent periods?
Good question. We haven't changed the definition, right? What we've done is we've actually, we haven't changed the definition at all. So these are for consistency, we included this slide, right? No definitions have changed.
Right.
To be clear, no definitions. That's probably that's the answer to that question. What has changed is that we've unpacked tech revenue further.
Right.
right? So if you think of total revenue as kind of a series of Russian dolls, right? Tech revenue and services revenue. The definition of services revenue is unchanged. It's anything that has a human in the loop.
Right.
Right? Anything that you have a human in the loop, if it's a re-speaker, if it's a stenographer, whoever it is, it's charged by the hour. It's paid on completion in arrears. That was all of our business at IPO.
Yep.
It's now a tiny part of our volume, and it's less than half of our total revenue, and it's a third of our total gross profit, and it's going to not to zero, but it's going to 20% of the total, and it'll be a wrapper around the rest of the services rather than a completely separate business line with full infrastructure, dark fiber, separate teams supporting it, et cetera, et cetera. So we're going to sunset the old legacy infrastructure by the end of December. That's kind of what we want to do there. So that's services and tech. Now, as I said, Donna and the team are right-sizing the business in terms of services to make sure that it continues to wash its face as it gets sunset, but they're two completely different businesses. Now, within tech, what we realized was that we had, again, a series of Russian dolls. First Russian doll is hardware, and second Russian doll is SaaS. And you go, well, okay, well, that's apples and oranges again, right? If I'm comparing, like if I'm selling, if we go actually to the products, which might be helpful. So the encoder sales, right? Even within encoder sales. So encoder sales are all tech, right? But if we manufacture and ship a physical Encoder Pro unit, it will land on a customer's doorstep and we will receive $10,500 in revenue. The moment it lands on the doorstep. If instead the customer is migrated to a 2110 IP facility, they don't use that anymore. They will use our Alta encoder, which is software, which they install on their hardware. Right? Instead, they're paying either $5 an hour for that, or they're just getting it included as part of their overall SaaS package. So we clearly have to pull the hardware revenue out, because sometimes the hardware revenue is SaaS, sometimes the hardware revenue is up front. Sorry, sometimes the encoder revenue is hardware, sometimes the encoder revenue is SaaS. So we have to pull out the hardware revenue first, because that's, you know, that isn't a clear line of growth, right? It's like it's lumpy. They buy them every 5 years, right? And then you go, okay, so in terms of, bear with me in terms of Russian dolls. So we have total revenue, we have services revenue, throw that away. We've got tech revenue. Okay, then we've got hardware revenue, we've got SaaS revenue. Okay, take out the hardware revenue. Now we've just got SaaS revenue. Can we deal with that? No, because SaaS revenue also includes Alta and Falcon, which are encoders. And if we've thrown out the hardware revenue, because it's not apples and apples, then we also have to throw out the SaaS encoder revenue. And then you realize, well, we also have to throw away the SaaS ICAP revenue, because the SaaS ICAP revenue is the revenue that we're charging people who are using our toll road to deliver either human or automated services that are in this black and not in the pink. And so we're actually trying to drive that number to zero, because we want the pink to go to the top. And so we have to pull the ICAP revenue out. And then you go, what else do you have to pull out? We have to pull out service and support, because the service and support is tied to the hardware. Right. And so by the time you've actually, so what we actually did is we said, okay, these are the metrics that you should focus on. Right? These are right. Like if you actually unpack everything and you go, okay, what are the clean metrics of success in terms of how well are we doing on our stated goal? And you can disagree with the strategy that we've got. You can, say that it's the wrong strategy for trying to get the market. That's fine, right? I'm concerned about just ensuring that we can demonstrate progress against that strategy. And that's what this slide is designed to do. This slide is designed to show people this is what matters. What matters is look at the hardware revenue, look at the number of encoders. We want them both to grow. Right? What's more telling is the number of encoders and Lexi volume and Lexi sales.
Mm.
They in turn drive the encoder lifetime value number.
Mm.
So the encoder lifetime value is the present value of the money we receive in selling the encoder itself, plus the lifetime present value of the SaaS services we put over the top of it.
Mm.
Right. So think of it, the printer and the ink, or the mobile phone and the plan, right?
Mm.
So when we bought EEG, they were only selling the printer and not the ink.
Yep.
Now, and they were only making then $7,000 was the lifetime encoder value. We've
Yep.
already increased the lifetime encoder value to $50,000 because for every year when we acquired EEG, for every dollar of hardware revenue was 10 cents of SaaS. Already, that's gone from 10 cents to $2. just in North American broadcast, just in text. And so therefore, because you've got that encoder for 5 to 7 years, that increases the lifetime value of the encoder. And you go, well, how much are you selling the encoder for? Well, we sell the encoder for $10,000. What's its value? $50,000. Wouldn't you fucking give them away? Hell yeah.
I mean, it's a forward indicator when you're looking at number of encoders, right?
It's the only indicator. And I really liked, Andrew, the way you kind of described it as kind of the Trojan horse strategy, because it really is. And that's what our competitors completely missed, right? Which was our ability to disintermediate them.
Yeah.
Right.
Love it.
By actually buying someone they didn't even think of as their competitor, which was EEG.
Yes. Not a competitor, but like a necessary enabler, which is amazing that they missed it. Yeah.
Well, they weren't focused on live video.
Yeah,
we were the only other company that was like laser-like focused on live. So they were all attacking things from kind of the size of the market, not realizing that they had no moat when ChatGPT can do all of this in a recorded setting.
Yeah, fascinating. Okay, follow-up question. What exactly falls into transition revenue? And why was that reclassified? And are we going to have a consistent reporting on that going forward?
Good question. Transition revenue is the revenue that we already had a handle on in terms of it being moved over to technology revenue by December.
Oh, I get you. Yes.
This is the slide that simply says, we're confident we'll get there by December. And then people say, well, you're only at 54%. How can you be certain it's a big lift to go from 54 to 80? And the answer is, we've been doing this already for 3 years.
Right.
We're at the end of the journey.
Yep.
You don't turn the lights out until you turn all the lights out.
Yep.
And we'll be ready to do that in December.
Okay, that's perfect. And final one, just in terms of some clarity on the revenue and metrics. Why was it that recurring revenue as a percentage of the total dropped when we're seeing this big SaaS push?
Revenue recognition. It's the it's the revenue. It's not. So if you actually look at it in terms of sales made, it's the 45%. If you look at it in terms of revenue recognized, because we're selling it now 12 months in advance, not in arrears, it's this transition bit.
The deferred revenue and
the deferred revenue. It's the
Yep.
deferred revenue.
Oh, fantastic. There was some concern about flat or declining tech revenue in North America. Was there any customer churn or some pricing pressure behind that, or what's the
SaaS, it's the SaaS revenue change.
I see.
Right. Again, it's the SaaS revenue change. And also remember, right?
Yeah.
We are replacing hardware revenue, which has a big sugar hit up front, with SaaS revenue, which is increasing encoder sales via SaaS rather than via a big sugar hit up front. As more and more North American broadcasters move to Alta and 2110, fewer and fewer of them buy hardware boxes from us.
Yeah.
And so that's part of the headwind in terms of revenue as we go through this transition period. And that's why that's why I think there's a really good opportunity for people who are prepared to double click into the story, because you can kind of see why people are missing most of this.
Look, it's honestly, it's easy to mix. That's where the best opportunities lie, when their things aren't obvious. When a company is so obviously great, well, good, but you don't get a bargain. So it's just worth double clicking on. Let me go to some of the viewer questions here, because I'll chew up all the time myself otherwise. Are you able to clearly disclose? There's a couple parts to this, so I'll give it to you in parts. To clearly disclose the Lexi sales that were booked.
That's what I'm showing here. The Lexi volume and Lexi sales. So that's
Okay.
this number. Yes, absolutely. We want to, not only do we want to show you that, and we will show you that, not just this half on half. So you'll want to see that number continuing to be north of 40% sales growth.
Right. Well, it's probably similar to the other points here as well. The other one was clearly disclosing revenue recognized in the current period versus revenue to be recognized later.
Yep, that's what we've done in terms of
Yep.
and that's on the balance sheet as well, where you can see that.
Well, what would you say, Tony? Contract liabilities, deferred revenue, it's one of those accounting concepts that it's not, well, maybe if it's just me, but it's not always immediately obvious. I think outside of the accounting profession, you might kind of think, why is that a liability? Now, it clearly is, because you haven't delivered on your promise yet. But it is a little bit different than other liabilities. Any advice or ways of thinking about that you think that might be helpful in the AI media context?
Oh, look, it's one of my big bugbears, actually, is the accounting treatment of this, right? Because you're right, like, it's sitting there as a liability. Yes, you're right, we still have to deliver it, but it's not going to cost us that much.
Right. There's a margin on that. Yeah.
Right. But
Yeah.
also, like, when the cost of it's like 10% of the total, right? And you go, well, why is it sort of sitting there as a contract liability? I mean, this increase of $2.7 million, that's an increase in liabilities for something that's going to cost us 200 grand to deliver.
Yeah.
So no, it's completely misleading.
Yeah, it is. It is, and it causes confusion. Yeah.
Right, but that's part of the double clicking opportunity.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the other one is,
and you have to conform to the accounting rules. Let it just be said as well. I should hasten to add that.
Well, we have to do that, but we could have capitalized half of the we could have capitalized
That's true.
500 grand if we'd wanted to of this sales and marketing and product development that's gone into Lexi Brew and Lexi Voice. But we don't want to, because we just want to keep everything clean and show everybody what we're doing, and we want to get US investors, and US investors don't capitalize. So, we're not going to make life more complicated. The only thing that we've got that we're still amortizing is kind of the historical M&A that we've got. And, I think that I think we're in a good position. I think it's, PME at 85 cents, as you said.
That's fantastic. I appreciate that one. I'll go to the next one here. Could you provide some insight into why the CEO's long-term targets are made public? I guess this is more a question for the board, but I'll put it to you anyway. So what insights into the CEO's long-term targets are made public? What purpose does it serve? Wouldn't it be more effective to keep aspirational targets within the business and then let the results speak for themselves?
That's a good question.
I guess additionally on that, how do you ensure setting such targets don't lead to short-term decision-making just to meet market expectations?
Oh, that's easy. Both answers. I mean, the answer is actually drawing both of those questions together. So the focus is not on short-term. The only way not to have a focus on short-term target is to set a long-term one.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, that's very clearly what we've said we're doing. If we're going to try to optimize for where we're going to be this year, or where we're going to optimize for where we're going to be in FY29, they're two distinct strategies.
Yeah.
They're just two distinct strategies, and they depend on where the market's going to be, where the market opportunity is. I'll give you look, one of the things that sort of sears in the back of my mind as a missed opportunity is the very first contract for the Australian Parliament that came up in 2018.
Oh yeah.
We were 3 months late in building our Lexi library tech stack to be ready for it. That contract has never come back up for tender.
Right.
So we lost that.
Yeah.
Right. What we're saying now is that there's a whole bunch of tenders that are going to come up between now and FY29 that we can't lose.
Yeah.
We can't have somebody else have the land grab. We can't have somebody else's Trojan horse in there.
Yep. Yep.
And we can't do that and optimize EBITDA this year, next year.
Yep.
We have to do one or the other. So what we're doing is we're just being clear as to what the strategy is.
Yeah, I love it.
That's all. That's all.
Yeah.
And it's just and it's not about keeping it quiet. I mean, there's no secret in any of this.
Sure.
Right? Like we want to actually make and then the other thing I'd say is I often get asked whether I hate being, you know, a public company CEO. The answer is I love it. because you can enforce accountability through the whole business.
Yeah. Yeah.
How else do I enforce accountability through the whole business unless setting targets?
Yeah, that's great.
And then what you want to set a target is a target that matters.
Yeah.
A target that actually matters, a target that's actually going to drive the business forward. And what we're saying is, well, the things that matter are these things. They're the transition to tech, they're the tech sales growth, they're the Lexi expansion, they're the global market leadership, and they're the enhanced AI portfolio. These are the things that we're focused on. These are all the metrics that we're talking about. We're not talking about total revenue. I mean, it's meaningless.
Yeah, it is.
Because you've got 17 things going in different directions.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? And it still amazes me the number of people that went, your revenue went backwards by 3%. You must be fucked.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, don't double click.
Yeah. I'm sure more than a few of that from trained analysts as well who should know better, which is the surprising.
They then go, well, what's everybody else going to think about it?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, they just
the Keynesian beauty contest. Yeah. I love it. So actually, this is on the deferred revenue and the that angle here. Good question here from Mushroom Panda. So he's made the observation: we've seen an increase in deferred revenue, suggesting you're selling more Lexi upfront. Yes. Can you talk about what's changed in how you're selling or structuring deals that's driven this shift? This is a great question, right? Because it's great to observe a very positive trend, and well done, that's great. But what in your mind is behind that? What lessons have you learned in terms of maybe even optimizing that further?
It's a great question. And actually it has a very, very simple answer. Which is that we aligned our incentives of our sales teams accordingly. And who knew that aligning incentives delivered results?
What is it? Show me the incentive and I'll show you the outcome, is what Charlie Munger used to say.
No, exactly. And I'm actually a big believer in I think carrots about 95% and sticks about 5%. Would be my sense on it.
100% agree.
We just changed and look, I'll credit Jason Singh, my new CFO, for this, right? He just said sales staff are now going to get rewarded when we receive the cash, and we encourage everyone to sell 12 months up front.
Makes sense. No follow-up question. That's there's nothing to add. That's great. Next one. Would you like to unpack encoders in the ecosystem? I think we've done this actually. Would you like to unpack encoders in the ecosystem slide? There is mention of Falcon Alta Encoder Pro, then Alta Everywhere. I have thought about the encoders as an EEG box, period. We kind of touched on that. What would you add to that?
No, I would think instead of ICAP and instead of thinking of the encoders as the EEG box, right? Think of actually ICAP and Lexi, or the ICAP system. Think of it being like Microsoft Windows.
Okay.
Right? Like it's actually the operating system that you can put on other people's hardware as well. Now, at the moment, it's only on one set of hardware and equipment, which is, HP equipment, but you could put it on Lenovo and you could put it on a whole bunch of other systems as well. The smarts are not the hardware. The smarts are the operating system.
Yeah.
And that's iCap and Lexi. Now, we happen to have got a whole bunch of encoders with that operating system that were the Trojan horses that helped us to expand our success, but that's the past. In the future, we've already got that operating system, and we just need to flash somebody else's hardware.
Yeah.
Do we want to do that? Absolutely. Is that the fastest way to success out beyond the 150 million? Yes.
Yeah.
But that's M&A.
Yes.
That's not this organic target.
Yes. Yes. Great. Next one we've done, I'll tick that off. Can you please elaborate more on putting Alta and iCap on third-party hardware? How are you thinking about structuring these partnerships to incentivize third parties, and what types of partners do you see as the best fit for this approach?
Great question. Very, very simple answer. Which organization can give us a larger number of encoders, right?
Yep.
And the greatest opportunity to increase the lifetime value of their encoders.
Yep. Yep.
And that's how we will look at it.
Yep.
And which of them allows us for the fastest land grab, right? In some of those markets that we have targeted for future growth. Right? Because we currently don't have any sales to speak of in the enterprise space. But when AI Media listed, 65% of our sales were enterprise.
Right. Yes.
But that was all being done by humans.
Yep.
So can we now do the same transformation that we've done in box 1, right? In box 7, 8, and 9 at the bottom. That requires somebody else's encoder network first.
Yeah. Follow up from me. Given how important this land grab is, Tony, how do you think about pricing in that context? You know, there is something to be, look, I don't know where the perfect line is drawn here, but there's somewhere between maximizing revenue generation today to maximizing the revenue stream over the life of the business. I don't know. Or how do you think about it?
Oh, it's all about maximizing the revenue stream over the life of the business.
Okay.
And in doing that, it's also about maximizing the value for shareholders today, which is minimize the amount of dilution up front.
Yes.
Right. So effectively, what I would do is I would say, look, what did we do well out of the EEG acquisition? What could we have done better? And I think what we did well was we did it very quickly. We integrated the businesses completely from day one. We were magnificently unafraid of cannibalizing our legacy business as a result of it. What we could have done better was preserve some of the capital for a bit longer. In other words, we could have back-ended the cash payments a bit better rather than front-ended them. We could have had a sharper earn-out ramp-up so that there was more juice in the lemon based on how many of the existing encoders were converted across to Lexi as quickly as possible. And then we could have dragged out the payments longer at the back end. So if you were to say, what would I look at for a basic encoder deal now? I would say small amount of cash up front, maybe 10 million AIM shares as a placement, right? Which is about 5% of the total issued share capital. That's it up front. Right. And then whatever balance of the payment will depend on the success of converting what would be a 98% hardware business across to being a 70% SaaS business within 3 years kind of thing. And then you structure the payments in kind of 6 equal increments following the end of the earnout.
Yes. I love how you're thinking about that, by the way. And
What do you
don't.
like about it? What do you,
Well, I like that it's been arrived at independently and it's not been whispered in your ear by an investment banker who's more interested in what they can clip the ticket on structuring a deal in a fancy way that sounds good but might not be in the best interest of long-term shareholders is my very cynical answer.
I like
Yeah.
it.
I mean, yeah, I mean, like like I don't think anyone does anything perfect, right? So it's like that's the value of experience. You've gone through the process. Yes, we did some things well. Here's some things we could do better, and next time you'll do it better. And next time you'll have other lessons, and you'll do it even better. You know, the third time. That's how we grow and learn, and that's what I guess that's what I also love about it. So it's great. And to your earlier point too with the sales team, I think anything that aligns incentives. So yeah, issuing some shares is a great way to do that. You know, to those you're acquiring. So yeah, I think it's good. Gosh, time is running out. So let's speed run some of these. What new opportunities does achieving SOC 2 and ISO 27001 compliance create for AI media, particularly in terms of customer segments, partnerships, and markets that you're now able to pursue?
Great question. So this is in the security. These are the security accreditations. These effectively are kind of rubber stamps that show that you've met certain security accreditations and allow you to avoid going through a very detailed information security questionnaire.
Yes.
They should speed up the sales cycle into government and enterprise somewhere from between 3 to 6 months.
Yep. Okay,
and that's why
great.
we're doing it now in advance of going into those sectors. It's not required for broadcast. Not
Yep.
required for broadcast. And why is it required for broadcast? Because broadcast is broadcast. So there's nothing secret.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. Lexi, Brew, how and why this can be done in parallel without distracting the big focus on EMEA? What is the competition like?
Great question. So Lexi Brew, or effectively Lexi AI, which we haven't really spoken about, probably also important to say doesn't require any assumptions in terms of the valuation, in terms of where the business is now,
Right.
compared to where we want to go. It's more just a marker in terms of this is where we are heading. This is the third business line that we will be developing, and to put some more meat on the bones of how those targets in FY29 are going to be achieved.
Yeah.
It's effectively a organizational chat GPT that keeps your organizational data contained, but shares it consistently within your organization.
Yeah.
That's the premise. And then that it will have an automatic failover to the public LLM system. And then in time, we haven't really spoken about this much, but this is our vision, is to then incorporate the live feeds that we're getting from all of our live Lexi into the system so that it becomes a more intelligent Bloomberg and notifies you first of any changes to your core assumptions based on your data set.
Well, that's pretty cool. Last one that I've got from our listeners. Broadly, what is the average duration of the Lexi contracts that AIM are now entering into? Has it become longer multi-year commitments, or is it mostly annually? Just trying to make better sense of the changes to contract liabilities.
Oh, look, the contract, good question, but it's the wrong premise. The contract liabilities are simply whatever we have signed and received in cash, but not yet delivered. The contracts have always been 3 to 5 years.
Yep.
They've always been 3 to 5 years. We're just now getting more cash up front for a whole year.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Tony, it's just raced by this hour. So the last one I'll put to you and let you go is what's the key message that you'd like to leave our listeners with? You know, the thing, if you could highlight one thing, emphasize one thing that is important for any long-term oriented shareholder to understand, what would it be?
Live video. This is
Live.
all about live video.
Yeah.
Everything, if you test everything that I've set out, but test it out against the premise of live video.
Right. Can I sneak one more in?
Yeah.
As what's the word for it? as a segment in and of itself, live video, it feels like that's only growing. But I don't want to do a leading question, although I know I do that. Is that your take?
Look, the ability
We're
for
doing
us,
it right now, I
yeah. Look,
suppose.
yeah. Look, the ability for us to get the same level of um, media annotation, translation, captioning, voice replacement on live video that we've been able to do on recorded video for about 18 months
Mm,
is with it. You
right.
know, we're going to be able to do live video translation.
Yeah, it's cool.
You know, pulling out my voice in English and replacing it in Korean.
Crazy.
Like it's, you
Yeah.
know, I've heard this work perfectly well in Spanish 2.5 years ago,
Yeah.
but it was recorded,
Yes.
right? Like, I mean, if you use Google Notebook, right, it can come up with 2, 3, 4 amazingly non-existent people to talk about your, you know, town hall or whatever you upload for it, and
Yep.
they sound like they're real people.
Yeah.
Well, so that tech's been there a long time, but imagine applying that to live sport. Imagine applying that to live news. And some of the indications that are around are some of the competing products that you're
Mm,
seeing other big tech develop, right? Like Apple have announced that the AirPods by the end of the year will be able to do automatic real-time translation.
wow.
And then some people have said, is this a threat to AI media? And you go, let's go back to that page,
You're
right?
right. Yes. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Which is, you know, the encoder, if you're wearing the AirPods, is the encoder,
Yeah.
is the AirPod, right?
Yeah.
So of course, Apple have got their own solution for this,
Yeah.
right? So what you should look to is other tech companies that are developing applications where they own the encoder is actually a really good indicator that AI media has a business model in
Mm.
the areas where we own the encoder.
I love that as well. Look at that. Allow me a little bit of an elaboration. I think that's another signal you see in really successful locally sort of started tech companies is that there's a very clear focus on where their edge lies and where that can be best prosecuted. I think one of the quickest ways to undo a company, even one with some good tech and good people and the rest of it, is to be spread too thin and to chase everything because it sounds good and it makes for a large TAM on a slide deck or whatever. But sometimes just saying, well, like this is a huge opportunity even of itself. It may be narrowly defined in one context, but that's where our strength is. And it just generally leads to a better capital allocation. So I guess I for one commend you on that focus.
Well, it's also a moat, right? It's also defensible. We don't have a moat outside of live.
Right. And just recognizing that and then going, okay, cool. Let's play on the inside of the moat.
Yeah. And where we can use somebody else's encoder network,
Love
right?
it.
That's it. Now, are we going to be able to use Apple's encoder network? No. Are we
Sure.
going to be able to use Zoom's? No. Are we going to be able to use, I don't know, the University of Western Australia's? Quite probably.
Yeah.
Who are
Yeah.
they using? I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out, right?
Yeah. Great. Fascinating as always. Definitely appreciate your time. I think we really hit the key points that aren't always immediately apparent, and I hope everyone has found it as valuable as I have. And look, we won't bother you too often, Tony, but we'd love to touch base again down the track and just to keep on top of things. You do have a lot of fans here at Strawman, and yeah, keep up the great work.
Appreciate that, Andrew. And maybe we can do another one in 6 months after the full year result.
Lock it in, 100%.
Okay. Thanks very
Okay.
much.
Thank you. Thanks, Tony.
Bye.